I just want to really quickly go back to how the actual selection goes down, because I think it's fascinating. So you guys are all in a room. It's 50 people, right?
48 elite selectors.
Selectors, and you have people come up, make the case. So you whittle it down from a pool of how many to...
Generally, every year, this is a different because it's the centennial year, and we're having 20 for 2020. But most years it'll be 18 finalists.
Okay.
Generally that's a senior and contributors that make up 3, and then it is players and coaches who make up the other 15 finalists.
Right.
And the seniors and coaches, kind of go out on their own, and then when we get to that 15, you go from 15 to 10. And then you kind of whittle it down to 5.
And now, what is that room like? Are people arguing? Is it the greatest sports debate of all time?
Like Peter King complaining about the coffee?
Yeah, it seems like a fascinating place to be in.
Well, listen, we've learned a long time ago the way to get elite media there is food.
Yes.
Okay, so
Diet Coke.
We got cookies for you guys here today.
Appreciate that. I noticed
but no, I think it's one of those things, PFT, where Peter King told me that he does 120 interviews all year round just to prepare for that one day. And we've got guys like John Clayton and Sal Palantonio and Jarrett Bell from USA Today. And these guys take it. I wish fans could see how seriously they take it. And most of them say that it's the most important day of their year.
Well, knowing how much NFL fans love the NFL, I think we should probably put it in like the middle of April and make it a TV show.
Well, listen,
I'd watch it.
It's like the New York Times endorsement where they had the whole editorial board sit down, they put it out. That would make a very compelling
I'll watch the whole day.
show.
Well, I'll tell you, there's things that we're looking at in the future that might be a little bit different.
Right.
But I will tell you, these guys, I didn't get this job just because I'm smart and good looking. I got it because I'm 400 pounds and you need a big guy to run this meeting.
No one's going to give you any back talk.
You literally have the best knock of all time. I think that was really just the resume, right?
Well,
they just took a piece of wood and they're like, "Here, knock on this."
Actually, do you mind knocking on this table right now?
Absolutely.
Oh my God! Yeah, that's a Hall of Fame knock.
Yeah, that's why you got the job. Okay, yeah.
But let me tell you, we've got to be done by a certain time because we announce our guys live to the world, really in the middle, the kind of the high point of the honor show,
right?
And so we got to move, but it'll take many times that I've been here, it's taken 10, 12 hours for the Blue Ribbon Committee that selected this centennial class. They met together for about 21 hours.
Wow.
And guys are passionate about it. And one of the things I'd love I can't share what goes on in that room or what's said, but I can tell you that good stuff, bad stuff.
Right.
The guys really get into it.
You have to have an honest conversation.
And that's why it's confidential.
Yeah.
So that guys can share stuff and bounce it off. But I do think when you make it into the Hall of Fame, you have gone under an incredible level of scrutiny by a whole lot of people who are experts at doing it.
Yes.
What's interesting is that you've got the centennial people that are getting in right now. You expanded the class a little bit. I think as the years move forward, you're going to run into a lot of log jams along the way because of how the game has grown in the media. It's expanded so much that people are way more familiar with players that played in the early 2000s, late 2000s up to the modern day than they were even with guys that played in the mid 90s. Those guys are, since TV rights weren't ubiquitous, they weren't everywhere, you couldn't watch them on every single bar. Those guys are in danger of kind of falling by the wayside, even though they had great careers. Is there something that you guys have planned going forward where you make sure that there are some spots in perpetuity for the older players?
PFT, that's really what the Centennial class was about. This year we have 10 seniors in that class. And you may not know Max Speedy or Bobby Dillon or Duke Slater. But Duke Slater was an African-American who played for 10 years in the NFL from 1920 to 1930. Now, let me tell you, you better be a good player at that time, to play in the NFL during that time. A great player. And so we have our senior committee, and our senior committee meets all by itself a lot of times, and it's to find guys who may have fallen between the cracks.
Right.
And then we have our contributors committee because the league isn't just those guys who are on the field. It's those guys who were owners who paid for payroll out of their kids' college fund because they had to make it, or those general managers who put these teams together, or a great guy like Steve Sable, You know, I mean, you guys are a little young.
No.
we
He
know
was a
Steve,
big
yeah.
part of the reason why we got in the game.
I'll tell you, I fell in love
Yep.
with this because of Steve Sable.
Yep.
It wasn't just the score. All of a sudden, it was the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field and that cloud of grass coming out of your face mask and a horrible uniform. To me, that showed you the determination, and
Right.
the courage,
Absolutely.
and the character of things. And then we're looking at a special category just for coaches, because sometimes, you know, for a lot of modern era guys, and one of the things the Hall of Fame does that's pretty cool is you got to wait 5 years after you retire to be considered. So if Tom Brady or Drew Brees, you know, was to retire now, or Eli Manning retired just the other day, there's 5 years from now before he's eligible for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And I think that's a pretty smart move because it gives perspective. It allows time for history to settle and to go into it. But it's a very difficult process. It is, you know, with so many media outlets like yourself, with you know, the cell phone and, you know, Brett Favre on the internet, it is, there's an opinion everywhere.
Right.
And it's extremely controversial. But what I would say is it should be hard to make it into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not the Hall of very, very good.
I love that saying.
Yeah.
It's the Hall of Fame.
People
Yes.
forget that.
I love it.
I want to be your position. I want to be the president of the Hall of Very Good. What steps do you recommend I take to achieve that dream?
You know what, PFT, I'll tell you, you know, you, to me, and I've only known you here for maybe, you know, 20 minutes.
Right.
But I would tell you, you excel at mediocrity.
Whoa,
Yes, that's the
nice.
that is the nicest compliment I've ever
That's a
gotten in
big
my
deal.
life.
Really think
Not
so.
everyone
So-
can do that.
I got butterflies in my
Yeah.
stomach.
You're on your way,
Absolutely.
buddy. You're on your way.
Can we talk about you for a
I'm gonna
second?
knock on my own door. Congratulations, PFT. Thank you, PFT.
You didn't play football because you were, quote, literally too big to play football.
Yeah. Yeah.
What does that mean? You were a great basketball player. You played in college. You played in pros.
Where I
in Switzerland.
grew up, they weighed you to play football as a kid.
Okay.
Okay, and you know, when I was 8 or 10 years old, you know, I was about PFT side, and
So,
and,
what,
and they,
6'1"?
and they would've-
8-year-old, yeah.
and they would have put me in with, you know, with 15-year-olds.
Right.
But we kind of corrected this in the next generation with both my kids.
Right.
You know, Sam played in the NFL and
Yep.
was a 3-time All-American ASC, and Ben played both in high school and some at Duke, but I've always loved football the most.
Yeah,
but,
I
but
love that about you,
basketball-
yeah.
Basketball got me to college.
Right.
And for me, it's important because we all come from someplace.
Yeah.
You know, for me, my mom and dad couldn't read or write. And if it wasn't for sports, I wouldn't have gone to college, I wouldn't have gone to law school, had the opportunity to play around the world. And I certainly wouldn't be sitting with guys like you here.
Which is probably a downgrade. Yep.
And you know, we're sitting in a pretty special place.
I love that story though, because you are, you know, the guy who's basically in charge of the history of the game. You're the president and CEO of the Hall of Fame, and you love football, from everything I've read, more than pretty much anyone who's ever walked this earth. Wow. And you didn't play, but that almost is like poetic and perfect because that's how much you love it. You know,
Cat, that's kind, and I appreciate it. I do love it. And again, what I love about sports, and this may be a serious topic for you guys.
No.
But what I'll tell you, what I care about it is there are so many lessons you can learn from sports. You know, my guys in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, in terms of race, they were way ahead of the curve. Mm-hmm. And they care about each other, and they love each other. We just lost Chris Dolan last night.
Yeah.
And you should see my phone with blowing up from the Hall of Famers. You know, and there's something about that huddle. You know, that, you know, when I was cheering for my son at USC and we'd go to Notre Dame, we'd take 15,000 Trojans with us. But let me tell you, you go to Lambeau Field and you're in Atlanta Falcons, you're lucky if there's 50 Falcon fans in there.
Right.
But you get into that huddle, and when you get in the huddle, nobody says, hey, you Republican or a Democrat?
Right.
Hey, before we do this, you know, what's your position on social change?
Right.
You know, frankly, the only thing that matters is me trusting you trusting me, the color of our uniform, not the color of our skin.
Yeah.
And that is just one thin sliver of this.
Right.
And what I love about this, and again, I'm probably getting way too serious for you guys.
No, we love it.
Yeah.
We love it.
But what I love about this and the job I get to do is, I got the greatest job in the world because I'm hanging with some of the best football players in the world. But I've learned that they're pretty good people too. Mm-hmm. And the game isn't just for those guys who have a bronze bust or those guys who got paid for it like my son. The game is for guys who become firemen and soldiers and police officers and fathers. And I believe these principles and a whole lot of dedicated coaches who taught him. My son, who played in the NFL, is now coaching high school, and he doesn't need to. He made a lot of money standing on the shoulders of these other guys, and he'd be the first one to say it. But what he wants to do, he wants to have an impact in the lives of some kids the way other coaches had an impact on him. Mm-hmm. And respectfully, when your life is, screwed up, and every one of us are at some point, okay, when your life is screwed up, you don't go back to your chemistry teacher, your calculus teacher for life advice. But I'll tell you, almost all of us go back to that coach.
Yeah.
And I really believe, Big Cat, that it's because that coach teaches you how to keep going when you don't think you can, or how to get up when you can't. So I love this because it's great football, and man, I love football. But I don't love it as much as John Madden does.
Yeah.
Or some of the other guys that I've been with. I mean, I'll tell you, Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick was on our Blue Ribbon Committee, okay? And he said it was one of the best days of his career. This guy with 8 rings, talking about, being at the Hall of Fame on that day, making history by selecting the Centennial class. These guys love the game.
Right.
And to me, it's a fun game to be with your friends, to scream and yell, to cheer for your team, to drink a beer. But there's so many wonderful lessons in it, and it's done a lot for me. Sports has done a lot for me. It's done a lot for my 2 boys.
Right.
And I hope that we can give back to it.